Hi, I'm Dr. Rudy Cashman. Welcome to our show. I've been doing this here for many years, and I really appreciate public access television giving us this time, because if you do about 75% of the things we try to teach you, you'll probably live to be 100, unless you get hit by a Mack truck or something. Okay, let's have a little bit of fun along this path. Today we have a very interesting subject, and it's about gluten. You know, you hear a lot about it, but many of us know very little about it. I didn't till a few years ago. A lot of the healthcare providers really don't have a lot of knowledge about it either, don't do a lot of testing. So I think you'll see after listening to this show that maybe everyone should be tested for it, because this is a lot more common problem than that we think. But let's sort of begin a minute and spend a few minutes on what I call the magic 8. You can get a copy of this by calling our phone numbers on cashmanhealth.com and get a free copy. This is the culture of wellness circle. What am I trying to say? You follow these things in general, and you'll avoid 95% of the most common diseases, illnesses that come along. And I'll review these 8 very quickly, but I'd like you to have a copy at home. You can teach the children, for example. Number one is we have to assume some self-responsibility for our health care. We must participate in our health care. Number one. That's number one on this wheel of 8, so that we don't just, it's not just script to the ill. No one's speaking to you. You have very little knowledge about you got. Medications have a lot of side effects, for example. Some medications we need. But I tell you, I saw a stat the other day. We lost 200,000 people last year from complications of medications. Yeah, that's a lot of people. That's a lot of people. So if we can prevent you from having this illness, Dr. Katz, on his famous book, Disease Proof Your Life, 35 years, the biggest public health official in the nation, he says, 93% of type 2 diabetes, which has horrible complications, strokes, heart disease, autoimmune disease, cancer, etc., many more, can be prevented by watching how you use your fingers, what you put on your fork, and how you use your feet. Those 3 things will avoid 93% of diabetes, amputations, renal transplants, unexpected heart attacks. One thing after another. Isn't that wonderful news? That's great news, and I'll teach you how to do it. 80% of heart attacks can be avoided. 50 to 70% of cancer can be avoided because it's related to the hormones and the fat on your body, because of estrogen and other 20 leukotrienes that are in fat. Fat is not just something that sits there. It puts out 20 nasty chemicals that considering calling it now a gland. This is all good news, stoppable, preventable. So let's continue on this path I'm speaking about. We spoke about participation in your health care. Number 2 is nutrition. I never said diet. I don't even recommend a diet. What I, in the end, recommend, you'll hear about later, 70, 80% nutrient-dense vegetables, fruit, maybe 20% meat, 30%, somewhere along that line, and you'll avoid most illnesses. No diet, because the vitamins, the minerals, the phytochemicals in this food will turn your appetite off. Very, very easy. Number 3 is physical fitness. I didn't say you got to run marathons. You got to lift heavy weights. I'm talking about walking a half-hour a day and maybe doing some light exercise. We're not speaking about a huge thing. It's not absolutely essential even to belong to a gym, but only 3.5% of the people exercise regularly. Yeah, they follow them. I know. I work out at a place almost an hour every day, and it's that only 10% of the members participate. And there was a select group that went there. So what are we talking about, okay? So, but you got to exercise them, because we have a sitting society today, which is like smoking a cigarette. Yeah, they found you sit for 2 hours, it's like smoking a pack and a half of cigarettes. We'll talk more about that. Next is some spirituality. If you can bring some spirituality in your life because of your thought process, your neurotransmitters, your hormones, your neuropeptides, you'll do better. I think it's a great idea. And it's a way of life. I want you to adopt not just to eat this way, it's a way of life. Being well is a way of life. Next, when this education began, I want you to remember mother and father, before they fertilize the egg, their habits, what they put on the fingers, on the forks, how they use their feet, will affect their genetic structures through epigenetics. So that puts that right in the baby. And then with the mother, how you use the fingers or forks and her feet affects the baby. So a lot of the illnesses they get later in life, diabetes, breast cancer, are determined even before conception. So education occurs before conception. Next, I'd like you to learn which I give talks on, I'd like you to learn the connection of the mind to the body through hormones, neurotransmitters, neuropeptides, how your thought process affects the receptors on your cells, in your 70 trillion cells in your body. I want you to learn that connection because 50 to 70% of the people who see a doctor have mild, medium, or severe depression, and they decorate that. They don't come in and say, I'm mildly depressed. They come in there, I got neck pain, I got headache, I have a skin rash, I got bowel trouble. So your thought process has tremendous effect on your health. Next, I'd like you to get regular blood testing. Starting when? American Heart Association says age 35. No, essentially at birth. I'd like you to get blood testing every year, once a year. Once a year, then we can follow the path of your sugars and the fats in your blood and other chemicals in your blood to be certain that you have them. You can avoid most illnesses. You can avoid 90% of the illnesses. Remember Dr. Katz's book? Okay, yearly testing. And then if you got to pay for it, well, then pay for it. And your costs will be so extremely low within a year or two. There are companies coming out. We can get all your blood tests done, maybe even at one of the pharmacies for like $30. Yeah, do that yearly and put that in a book, on a computer page, and follow it all your life, and then do something about it if something needs to be done. You'll live to be 100. I guarantee it. I guarantee it. You just gotta do this. You must participate in your health care. So we've been through the thing of wellness. I put this together. You can get a copy of it by going to our website, cashmanhealth.com. Call the phone number, we'll send it to you, or attend one of my free lectures I give twice a month for Lutheran Hospital. Again, the lecture schedule is cashmanhealth.com, and we'll get you healthy. And all this is essentially free. So let's get to gluten now. Let's get down to the bare facts here of gluten. Gluten comes from wheat type plants, and we'll go through this bulgur and other things, and spelt and kamut, and we'll tell you that to you in a minute. And it's our daily bread. Gluten is our daily bread. What is gluten? It's a protein. About 15% of wheat would be the protein gluten. Many different types, but what we'll just call a gluten, we could call it gluten-in. It's amino acids, which is the breakdown products of protein. And you hear the words gliadin and gluten-in and many other, but this is all the chemistry you need to know. What else is it found in besides wheat? Rye, barley, bulgur, spelt, kama, K-A-M-A, they have it in also, but they're so prevalent in the things that we're eating that we'll just stay with rye as being the main cause of it, and wheat, wheat being the main cause of it, okay? And the problem with it is it's a different wheat today than we had years ago. Years ago, about 15,000 years ago, we started farming 10,000 years ago, and wheat was largely flat on the ground. It had about 12 chromosomes. And then through crossbreeding, accidental crossbreeding, pollination, it slowly changed, then became Emma, then it had about 26 chromosomes, and then it turned into triticum, and about 40, 50 chromosomes. So now there are many different types of wheat through hybridization and genetic changes, because now we've learned how to do that. And the Institute of Maize and Corn outside Mexico City, 1948, a doctor from University of Minnesota named Berlo started, and they used Mexico City because there were 2 seasons. They could grow things for 2 seasons, and the world was starving. What he did, reinvented wheat. It was 12 feet high. He made it about 18 inches high, the stem was much stronger, so the wheat flour wouldn't fall over and some of it would die. And he was the founder of the Green Revolution. He won the Nobel Prize of Medicine, and he got many presidential medal. He was honored. He's dead at this time. I was walking through the University of Minnesota recently for a National Wellness Conference, and there's a little illustration that was on the sidewalk, and who the heck it isn't? It's Dr. Berlo. Most people walking by had no idea who he was, but they had him bending over inspecting wheat in Mexico back in the 40s. I thought it was really a godsend thing that I saw him that day. I took a picture of it. It's on my phone. The trouble is Dr. Berlo never tested this hybridization genetic changes he caused in wheat on humans. It was just increased the yield 10 times, sent all over the world, caused the Chinese to feed the people, the people from India feed the people, the Asians fed the people. But then you look at the world today, they all got type 2 diabetes. They're way overweight. They're way overweight. And they're eating this wheat, and I'll tell you the reason. And that's a lot of part because there's many side effects to it. So what is bread? Let's talk about bread a little bit here. It's our crack cocaine. It makes us feel good. You can't seem to stop eating it, okay? Matter of fact, I don't eat white bread anymore. I use Ezekiel bread. It's like the chapter in the Bible, Ezekiel, spelled like that. You can get it in the freezer section of a store today. And it's sprouted. That cuts out 30% of the calories. It still has a lot of the vitamins in it. And it tastes good. It tastes good. So, and bread makes exorphins, morphine-type compounds that affect our brain, and we're in heaven. So we hear the terms bagel brain, pretzel brain, and then you hear wheat belly. Yeah, wheat causes big belly. So a book was written, which was on the #1 bestseller list for a couple of years by William Davis, a cardiologist, wrote Wheat Belly. I encourage you to read this book. I encourage you to read this book. When he goes through all this history and what it does to you, he noticed, and I always thought I was of great weight, and I just cut out what breads in general, except to eat some Ezekiel bread. And I exercised a lot, played tennis, and I thought, yeah, I was a perfect figure. Well, what happened was about 12, 15 pounds fell off of me. Must have been here above the belly. My pants started falling off of me while I was standing up giving a talk. So I went over to Despis, had all my clothes pulled in, and I spent a lot of money doing it. And something must have disappeared there, okay? So did have a little fat on me, obviously. And so if you want to get rid of a pot belly real quick, cut out bread. That'll do it. Watch the sugar you eat, and sugar's the booger. It's not the fat. It's the sugar is the booger. And the reason that wheat will do this is that it is 15% protein, okay? And if you were to take wheat flour, add a little water, stir it around a little bit, heat it slightly bit, and then put it through a sieve, you'll have left the gluten. And you can you can make a ball out of it. You can throw it, and really almost like a tennis ball. That's the gluten, okay? And that's what holds a lot of these muffins and things together, and that's why they use it. Donuts, pretzels, it's the gluten that holds it together. The Romans added a little bit of CO2 to it, and that's what caused these pockets of air, and that's what they call then bread. Okay, so the wheat has in it protein, carbohydrates, and a little bit of fat. About the main carbohydrates, about 80% carbohydrate, is amylopectin A, very complex compound. The trouble with amylopectin A is you absorb it quickly. It punches holes in your gut, makes holes in your gut, goes in the bloodstream, and very rapidly causes a rise in insulin, which is not good because insulin, besides pushing sugar in the cells, insulin has many other side effects. It deposits sugars in your brain, causes arthritis, causes cancer, causes inflammation in the body. So amylopectin A, and then goes to the liver and makes a fatty liver. Fatty liver is very dangerous. We now have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. If you get an ultrasound of some people's liver, I saw a lot of that because I treated back trouble. So we did CTs of the belly, and I was looking at fatty livers a lot in people, and most of them were overweight, bread eaters, sugar eaters. And the most common cause of an operation in the future is going to be liver transplants for non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. That will be more common than cirrhosis from alcohol. Very interesting. And it quickly causes insulin resistance, which is the first step in what? Type 2 diabetes, which has horrible complications, dementia, cancer, heart disease, strokes, skin diseases, renal transplants, amputations, blindness, other complications of type diabetes, which is, remember what I said, 93% avoidable by proper lifestyle. How we use our fingers, where we put on our forks, and how we use our feet. So amylopectin A is very dangerous, and that's the main carbohydrate inside gluten. That's why you want to avoid it. But there's many other effects that it punches holes in your gut because it causes relief of an enzyme called zonulin. And we have our mucosa, our gut. If you were to stretch out our gut to increase the absorptive surface, it has many folders, okay? If you were to stretch out the whole gut, it would take up 2 tennis courts per person. 2 tennis courts per person. What gluten will do is flatten out these villi, which you need to absorb your minerals, your chemicals, your proteins, your fats, no longer absorb properly. So one of the main diseases of gluten problems is celiac disease. That's the most severe form. 1 in 133 people have celiac disease, okay? The trouble is 6 times as many are gluten sensitive, okay? They're the ones who need to watch what foods cause them problems versus people who have celiac disease need to avoid it altogether. The disease was first described around 1850. And then Dr. Dickey in 1950s or so then helped discover the cause of it. And unfortunately, we're not testing for it very much in the United States, so we're missing 95% of the cases. In Australia, Italy, they run a gluten test on everybody. It's increasing in this country, and the problem is gluten causes many illnesses, and I'll go over those shortly with you. And we look at the glycemic index that we eat sugar, how fast that does our sugar level goes up. You eat beans, and the glycemic index 0 to 100, bean would be 30. Wheat's about a 72 because the amylopectin A is converted to sugar very quickly. Increases the insulin level, causes fatty liver, and then you get the complications of insulin, which I remember said is insulin's job is to put sugar into the cell. But it does many other things. It causes dementia, causes arthritis, causes cancer, causes inflammation all over the body. Table sugars, glycemic index, for example, is only 59. And the reason is table sugar is 50% glucose, 50% fructose. And fructose does not increase the insulin level, although it will cause fatty liver. Okay? So we speak about Dr. Burrow and the agricultural geneticist, the Institute of Maize and Corn, which you know about now, no human testing, mistake, mistake, mistake. And because our evolutionary history, our bodies don't change much. Every 20,000 years, 0.002%, it changes. That we've changed our food, and our bodies are reacting to it. They're not used to it. So that's the reason we see these diseases. Our bodies, through evolution, have not been accustomed to the genetic structure, the mathematics, biomathematics in the food we're eating. Yes, there's mathematics in your food that you're eating. And so I already told you about the chromosomes changing. And what the gluten will do is called malabsorption. You won't absorb it properly, and then because the zonulin holes are punched in your gut between the villi, and the villi, remember, mucosa is flattened, your bloodstream is facing these foreign substances. Your immune cells, the 50% of your immunity, the white cells, are located behind your one cell layer of your gut. Your mucosa is one cell layer. And we're talking about nano sizes, okay? What's behind there? Your lymphatic system. 50% of your Army, Navy, and Air Force that defends you, and now you got holes in your gut, and the food substances are hitting the bloodstream, and there's tremendous reaction of the gut to that. Besides, your antibodies, which are your Army, Navy, and Air Force, is reacting to the foods you take in, but also it's reacting to the changed mucosa, so it also makes holes in the gut. But it secretes enzymes, antibodies, which we can take advantage of when we test you. And we test you for this. There'll be anti-mucosa enzymes we can test for to see if you are gluten sensitive, okay? So our immune system is very important. Like I said, there's many different names for gluten: gliadin, gluten-in, many subtypes. Gluten, you can stretch it, you can knit it, you can roll it, you can throw it. It's a complex amino acid with many chains to it, okay? So it sticks together, it traps things, for example. And the Romans added CO2 and trapped its CO2, and it's bread, okay? So it's bread. So we have no evolutionary history, which is a problem. Celiac disease and autoimmune disease is the most common, but it's not the most common, but it's the one that we read about. 1 in 130. Used to be, especially children would get it. You can get it at any age, but especially children, it's highly genetic. Also, would get it, and they would just waste away. And if no one figured this out, they would indeed die. But today we have celiac disease, and people are overweight. They're not underweight. So it is confusing. So testing is important. So autoimmune disease means you're attacking your own body. Your immunity is attacking your own body. What are the symptoms? This is a killer. You won't believe it. It actually is a killer. We can have around 250 symptoms. So it's difficult to diagnose if you have a gluten problem. And that's the reason I'm going to say, sometime in your lifetime, sooner the better, get a gluten test, especially if there's family history. It's highly genetic. You may feel fine. You may look great. Get a gluten test. It's not done in this country. Many times you won't pay for it. Well, try to pay for it yourself. Go to Althatech LabCorp and bargain with them. Say, Rudy sent me, and give me a deal. And a gluten panel. You want a gluten panel. You need to know, because the gluten can cause seizures, dementia, memory loss, a rash all over your body or just in your joints, psoriasis, rheumatoid arthritis. Matter of fact, it can have problems becoming pregnant, infertility. And a good example was someone that occasionally comes in and helps clean a house, and her daughter couldn't have a baby. They were married, beautiful couple. She was a nurse. And I said, when did you get a gluten test? She got a gluten test, a gluten positive, and a gluten-free diet now, 4 children later. And every time this person comes over to help us with the house, Christmas, for example, she is so ever grateful for her, because she has 4 grandkids there, her only grandchildren. I see the point. I'm so glad I suggested that. People forget to do that. It can make you anemic. People with gluten problems can have gas, they can have diarrhea, constipation, hair loss, seizures, memory loss, asthma. I'm just going to name a few. Hepatitis, myocarditis, delayed puberty, infertility, bloating, diarrhea, weight loss, weight gain, fatigue, gas, joint pains, missed menstrual periods, infertility, muscle cramps, skin rashes, cold sores, vitamin and mineral deficiencies because you can't absorb them because the mucosa has been destroyed. The enzymes there to absorb calcium and vitamin D aren't there. That's just a sample. I've got great books here, and I'll give you some more titles. They're listed in there because part of this gluten thing, you've got to participate in your healthcare. You've got to do some reading. Look at websites, read a few books. This is not an easy thing. I can alert you to get the testing, but if you have some medical problems that can't be explained, consider this. My banker, girl, maybe 35, attractive, all of a sudden starts gaining weight, complaining of joint pains all over her body. I said, maybe you got a gluten problem. Then I hadn't seen her around. She was gone. And I think she'd gone to a family doctor who did not order the screening test, but did the right thing there. He sent it to a rheumatologist. You think that would do it. Well, he didn't order a gluten test. They even put her on steroids without a gluten test. And guess what happens? Steroids can cause aseptic necrosis of your joints. She lost both her hips. Then I said, well, did you have a gluten test done then? She says, no. I finally believed you in the first place. I just followed a gluten-free diet, and guess what? I came to a normal weight. All my joint pains went away. And fortunately, these new hip operations really work well. And she's doing great, but she could have had still her own hips, avoid a lot of trouble in the first place because she wasn't screened, especially those clues of joint problems, joint swelling. In this modern day and age, it's not excusable not to have run those tests, especially a rheumatologist. That was very sad, very sad. And so remember what I said about gluten too, and bread, because they make these gluteomorphine-like substances. You can become addicted to donuts. I mean, most of us easily, okay? They make us feel good like that because you're taking morphine. Eat 2 or 3 pieces of bread, you're taking morphine. You're taking a narcotic. They call them gluteomorphines, okay? And they studied that because they gave naloxone, which is used for some people come to the emergency room from a narcotics overdose, or might even do it on the ambulance. They give them naloxone and they wake right up. Well, it affects the neurotransmitter. So that can be given to people who have this great feeling from eating bread, and they tested them with naloxone and find the effect is lost like that. Interesting. It's been proven, okay? It's been proven. So bread can put us in chains. Muffins can put us in chains, really. I mean, it's the new slavery. One of my last books I wrote there on Amazon Books. You can find 21 of my books. And the last one I wrote, The New Slavery. It's about wheat and sugar. And sugar. We're slaves to it again. And it's more addictive than cocaine, than morphine, okay? So wheat, sugar can addict you. Yeah. You can detox about 3 weeks if you restrict it severely, okay? And then, in what way of eating do I recommend? I'm going to touch on this a few times. Frankly, to avoid fatty foods, because 97% of the fatty food will sit in your belly or your buttocks within 4 hours. You only lose 4% metabolism. If you eat nutrient-dense foods or colors, 70–80% of the time, vegetables and fruit, for example, maybe minimum meat products, or at least organic meat if you're going to eat that, because the food I'm recommending is water-dense, fiber-dense, can't be broken down, and the metabolism of it takes a lot to break it down. You lose 50% of the calories if you eat that way. You want to lose weight? Try that one. Eat 80% nutrient-dense. Weight loss is easy because you lose half the calories in the metabolism, the water-dense, the fiber-dense. And if you increase your activity of living, you know, walk the dog, maybe at work, use a treadmill desk or a stand-up desk, do a little bit of weightlifting, play a sport, go dancing, something of fun, whatever. Stand up when you're doing the dishes, stand up when you use a phone. You increase your calorie burn. Do you think weight loss is tough? No. Eat nutrient-dense food, improve your activity of living. And I just finished writing a book called Sitting Disease. That'll be on Amazon shortly. Explains all that in great detail. So we reviewed the history a little bit here. Some people can have celiac disease with no symptoms, and it can pop up any time in their life. A traumatic event, a house fire, a divorce, a loss of job, stress can trigger all of a sudden celiac disease or gluten sensitivity. Remember I said some people don't have gluten disease where they can't even have a molecule of gluten. I mean, not a molecule. They can be gluten sensitive, so some foods they react to, a glass of wine, a piece of bread, but they may not react to every piece of gluten. So they have to figure out which foods bother them, keep a log maybe. But gluten sensitivity is a lot more common. You know, 1 in 133 have celiac disease, maybe 1 in 20 are gluten sensitive. Yeah, yeah. So gluten testing by your doctor, insist on it. You don't want to do it, insist on it. And if you got to pay a little bit for it, go bargain with one of the companies so you can get it cheaper. So let's talk about the test a little bit. You get a gluten panel, and they have gliadin and IgA1 on there, and then the antibodies that involve your mucosa. There's 2 of them on there, T, GT, glutamate. These are all on the gluten panel. That's step 1. If that's positive, get genetic test. The next step really would be endoscopy. Half the gastroenterologist puts a tube in there and takes a biopsy of one of the villi. Don't start with that. They may want to start with that because they get paid for that, but don't start with that because there's some risk. Low risk, very low risk, but there's some risk. They can punch a hole in your gut. I've seen it. And so start with the gluten panel, okay? Confirm it with endoscopy. Last would be genetic testing. It's a little more expensive, but you want the rest of the family members to know about it. If it's running in your family, I think it's good to know about. In Italy and in Australia, they commonly do these tests. Matter of fact, Dr. Lustig, Fat Chance, Dr. Lustig, great book he wrote, great book. Read that if you have some time. He went to Australia, found a doctor who had about 100 pictures in his office, and there were pictures of people who had lupus. That's one of the diseases which we caused by gluten. We'll go with some of those more later. He cured every damn one of them with a gluten-free diet. 100 people who were terribly disabled were put in a gluten-free diet. They were sent to him from all over Australia, cured 100 of them. He should really get the Nobel Prize for medicine for that. But Lustig saw that, very interesting. And that guy had written a book many years ago, and if you've, it used to be in publishing law, if it's been out 40 years, you can republish it under your name, and Dr. Lustig did. I thought that was really good. I thought it's really good. And so what's some other things you can cause from these largely autoimmune diseases, you might call them, where your Army, Navy, and Air Force is attacking your body because these holes in your gut are bringing through all these foreign substances. Rheumatoid arthritis. Remember, I talked about my lady at the bank? She had all these joint pains. They told her she had rheumatoid. Her rheumatologist said rheumatoid arthritis when she had a gluten problem. Cancer, increased rates of cancer. Yeah, the tremendous increased rates in cancer, especially in the elderly. All these lymphomas they get, all those people should have had gluten tests before, even while they got it, to see if that's a problem. I had a close relative who developed a lymphoma, pretty serious type. She's almost 70, and I ran a gluten test, and it was positive. And she had developed this rash called dermatitis herpetiformis, where you get this rash on the joints, very itchy. They're itching all the time, and she was itching all the time. So everybody thought it was from her chemo, which it certainly was, because the chemo was punching holes in her gut, and she was eating gluten, and that was doing it even better. And then she stopped the gluten foods, and guess what? Her rash cleared up. This thing that kept her up day and night, itching and stuff, went away because she ran a gluten test. Isn't that interesting? Type 1, type 2 diabetes are related to gluten. Type 1 diabetes, where you don't make the insulin, okay, the pancreas is killed by a virus, autoimmune disease, who knows for certain, is increasing at 2.7% per year. Per year, 10 years, 20% increase in type 1, where see more in children than adults, but actually type 1 is occurring more in adults now because the type 2 diabetes, where you make too much insulin, is occurring because sugar can't get in the cell. The insulin rises outside of that, and the pancreas, trying to keep up, dies out. So a lot of type 2 diabetics are becoming type 1 also. Now they need insulin shots. So, but increased rates of type 2 diabetes are gluten sensitive. It occurs in children, newborns. So to gluten test children, Dr. Varolo, my friend pediatrician across from Eddie Mallows, tests every child for gluten sensitivity. celiac disease, because type 1 diabetes is partially related to that. I spoke to a diabetic educator recently, actually a children's diabetic specialist at one of the hospitals recently. She did not know that. And I even gave a book to read about it, and she never called back. But you got to know that. Gluten testing in children is very important, because type 1 diabetes rate picks up. And we're seeing increased rates of diabetes in children, partly because they're getting overweight. It's part of it. But some have a gluten problem, which of course increases the weight problem too. Many neurologic diseases are related to gluten. Many. I spoke to where I work out the workout room for a period of time. I met a new doctor who joined our old neurology group. She says, that's interesting because she comes through recent education. She runs a gluten test on every neurologic patient. Wow. That wasn't done before. She's doing it. I loved it. Just what I'm talking about. Everyone, because the gluten gets through holes in the gut, have autoimmune reactions. Cerebellar ataxia, where people dance all over the place, very unsteady, is considered to be related to gluten. Some seizures, some memory loss, a lot of neurologic diseases. Some people even think MS and maybe ALS got something to do with it. They're not sure, but let's be open-minded. You got a disabling neurologic disease, get a gluten test, very important. Thrombocytopenia, canker sores, very common. I know a relative had a lot of canker sores, ran a gluten test, it was positive. Neuropathy, numbness, lupus, remember I talked about in Australia? Ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease. I know patients who have ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, where their gut's sloughing away, they're bleeding all the time, horrible things. Many get operated on, and I talked to a significant number, they never had a gluten test when gluten punches holes in their gut. Come on. It attacks mainly the small intestine, but sometimes even the colon. So ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, irritable bowel disease, get a gluten test. We already spoke about increased rates of cancer and many other cancers, but especially in the elderly. A lot of these lymphomas can be related to gluten. I know of a person in my neighborhood died recently, and I kind of wonder if he had a gluten test. I don't know, but you do wonder. And so wheat is related to heart disease because of the diabetes thing. And remember, the amylopectin A, because it causes a rapid rise in insulin and leptin deposits fat in the body. So it does that and goes to liver, causes de novo lipogenesis, make a fatty liver. To avoid it, can have tremendous effects on your body. Gluten increases your triglycerides through the amylopectin A. Triglycerides are the ones that hang out near your receptors. Your 70 trillion cells need to get some energy into it. How does it do it? It takes sugar, and insulin has to push the sugar by opening these doors up, these receptors on your 70 trillion cells. But if they're full of triglycerides, fats, sugar cannot get, insulin cannot get the sugar into the cell for energy. So the insulin has to go up higher and higher and higher to get it in there for energy, because you have no energy, you're dead. And the pancreas eventually says, I'm pooped up, I'm tired, and they die. Yeah. One way to check whether your pancreas is working or not, you're pre-diabetic or diabetic, get a C-peptide test. I teach the path to diabetes. We're diagnosing people much too late because we're ordering only a fasting blood sugar when we should be running a glucose tolerance test. We diagnose it. Go to Mark Hyman, How to Speak to Your Doctor. You can print it off. 71 pages, free. Page 911 are the ones you need to read. He puts into 6 stages to diabetes. Rarely do I speak to a provider that has diabetes in stages. Actually, Dr. Atkins, who enough people badmouth, I don't recommend all the fatty food he recommends in the end, but he said sugar was a booger in 1995 based on papers of Dr. DeFranzo, 76 papers, which I've all read. He put it in 5 stages to diagnose people early. just to run, you know, if you weigh 200 pounds and you go to your doctor and you get, oh, your fasting blood sugar is normal, you don't have diabetes. Baloney, baloney, baloney. You need a 2-hour glucose tolerance test where they pull your blood sugar and your serum insulin, and they will catch you at least at stage 1. But there's a Dr. Westberg, Dr. Westberg, who published a book called End of Diabetes. I encourage you to read it. He's the one who went to the island of Guam for 15 years because they were running a 99% diabetic rate in the island of Guam. And the reason that happened, the Japanese flattened the island. They couldn't grow any of their own vegetables. And the Americans brought in their food, including Spam. And 2 years later, 99% of these beautiful natives became horribly obese, judgment-free zone, horribly obese, and developed diabetes, and were dying young now. And he went there for 15 years and taught them how to turn this around. What he came up with are the 5 stages to diabetes, which is even earlier than Dr. Mark Hyman. So I'm putting that together so we can test people very early, very early. Remember what I said? What did I say? Start testing at age 1 at least. And I'm going to speak with my friend Dr. Barbrula across from Manny Malone, because he really is into wellness and preventing things. Then I wonder what he's testing between age 1 and birth, for example. But I say at least, when the American Heart Association says age 35, I say age 1. Yearly blood testing will catch you on the path to diabetes, avoid horrible complications, which I mentioned already, from amputations to blindness to cancer and heart disease and stroke. I mean, does it get any worse than that? I can name about 10 other things. Can all be avoided 90% of the time. Remember, Dr. David Katz, probably 93% of the time, depending how you use your fingers, where you put on your forks, and how you use your feet. That's not hard. I mean, I'm not talking about running marathons. I'm not talking about dieting. I'm talking about eating 70-80% nutrient dense, increase your activity of living, your AOL, and eat nutrient dense 70-80% of the time, and you'll be very healthy. Live to be 100. Just switching, incidentally, if you don't have any problem with gluten, and just switching to a gluten-free diet, is an automatic loss of 400 calories a day. Yeah, that alone will cause weight loss. And the reason people gain a lot of weight eating a lot of gluten is because the insulin is lipogenic. It deposits fat. Also because you're absorbing more fats, so you have glucotoxicity, you have lipotoxicity, and the insulin inflames your body. You see how quickly that you get sick, and very interesting. So for gluten sensitivity, I mean, some of the tests are abnormal, but they're not all abnormal, okay? So that's a tougher one to diagnose. But then again, if you have some health problems and you're gluten sensitive, you might go, 80% gluten-free, see how you do. You got to watch things that are labeled gluten-free, because that's a trick. What I'd rather have you do is pick vegetables and fruits and 20% organic meats. If things that label, a lot of times they're very calorie dense, and you find out I'm not losing any weight. I mean gluten-free. Well, they loaded you up with calories, and they loaded you up with sugar. You got to watch that. So the gluten-free label, I think what you got to do is really educate yourself and read some other books. And I'll throw some up there. Yes, Dangerous Grains, I think is a very good book. Why Gluten Cereal Grains May Be Hazardous to Your Health. Very good book by Braley. Ron Hogan here, I think, is a very good book. Call us if you don't get your name here. Great book, too. The G-Free, the G being the gluten, by Hasselbeck. Elizabeth Hasselbeck is excellent. Many of them have recipes in there, and they also tell you about the tricks of the trade here. Living Gluten-Free for Dummies by Dana Korn. Also excellent books. Remember what I said, if you have a problem with celiac disease or serious gluten sensitivity, you're going to have to participate in your health care, become educated. You can't just go to the market and because it's gluten-free, and you think you'll survive on that. That will not work. You got to become educated so you really know this. But I sure as heck insist, just insist, that everyone gets a gluten test. Absolutely insist on it. Because you may have no symptoms, but down the line, some stress, a divorce, loss of job, bang, this disease pops up, and it can kill you. Cancer can pop up. A lot of breast cancer is related to this. Oh yeah, much higher rates of breast cancer, people with gluten problems. Big time, big time. Most women do not know that being overweight causes breast cancer 50 to 70% of the time. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. They don't tell them. Rarely do I speak to one, but I've told you. And it's all over the books. Go to the Mayo Clinic book of breast cancer, page 58, I think it is. It tells you that. Breast cancer related to being overweight. Why? Because fat has in it estrogen. And also milk products are a problem here, because if your mucosa is flattened out from gluten, you lose the enzyme to metabolize lactase in milk. Yeah. So, yeah. Whitewash by Keon. Whitewash by Keon. Great book to read. If you feeding your kid milk after that, you don't know how to read. And it's scientific, full of references, and the proteins in milk help increase the rate of type 1 diabetes, increased rates of cancer, increase of neurological disease. So because you don't have the, first of all, Asians, South Americans, blacks, whites some too, but they have much higher rates. Asians essentially have no enzyme through genetics to break down milk. You notice no mammal drinks the milk of another mammal except us. There's a reason for that. Different proteins, different fats, different carbohydrates. Yeah, what do you think they do to milk today to get the cow to produce more milk? They put hormones, and 24 hormones are given to the cow so that it'll secrete more milk. It's a hormone thing. Milk secretes through hormones. They think they're pregnant, okay? And they put on pesticides because when they keep the bugs away, they lock them in a cage for months at a time to increase the yield of milk 10 times. And then you give it to your kid or you drink it. Totally ridiculous. I drink almond milk, no sugar, no fat, and I'm used to it. And other ways to get it, low sugar, low fat. If you need it, maybe even go without water, lemon, and lime. But a pure milk is not a health food. If you don't believe me, I want you to make your own mind. Whitewash by Keon. Great book to read. It'll serve your family well. So we spoke about celiac sensitivity, 7 times more common than celiac disease. 250 possible symptoms similar to celiac. Go gluten-free and the symptoms clear up, okay? But you need to do some reading here, because just to follow the gluten-free label, which is all over the place these days, may not do it. It may not make you healthy because they found, the tricks of it. Peak diagnostic times, infants around age 20. So children, if your pediatrician doesn't bring it up, you wonder about your pediatrician. And that should be ordered. Every child get a gluten test. Everyone should have a gluten test. And only 5% diagnosed in this country. How do you spell pathetic? Pathetic, pathetic, pathetic. And it needs to be done. And the reason it's not done, lack of information. The people have not read the books. It's not been taught. Especially neurologists need to screen everybody for gluten. Not all neurological diseases related to gluten sensitivity. They need to know that. So, safe foods, okay? Become educated. Remember, I'm trying to promote education. And if you have celiac disease, that's been proven, you can't eat gluten. 100%, one little molecule alone, you're gonna have a horrible reaction, okay? So compliance is needed. The diabetic educators at Lutherans tell me only 50% of the people are compliant about their diabetic medications, and they can be expensive, and they may have other reasons. I'm not blaming them. It's a judgment-free zone. I'm just trying to help people. So it's a problem. But in gluten, you can't play that game. You're going to be sick. You're going to be sick. So books, medical providers, websites, some of these books are full of websites. you need to have some of those and slowly build your knowledge. This is not an illness you can just pill to the ill. It will not do it. I beg you. I beg you. You got to get information and use these websites, sprue.com, gluten.com, many others, and they're writing these books here. I could talk about it for an hour, so we'll save you from that. Okay. So websites, and you'll find a provider knows a lot about it, but that's not easy. That's not easy. So you need to get involved with your health care, no exceptions, and lack of compliance here could result in many illnesses. You'll probably cut 20, 30 years of your life and maybe more. We could include death. USDA doesn't require a label. Would you believe it? You know, lobbying money. The FDA labels some of the foods. Lobbying money is doing this because it depends on these organizations. Okay, and gluten-free, you can't totally trust it. You can trust it in terms of may have no gluten, but it may be full of other foods that increase your weight and that are unhealthy for you. Okay, and but let's talk about some naturally gluten-free foods: fruits, vegetables, organic meats not fed by wheat. Okay, not fed by wheat. Ocean fish not fed by a farm. 90% of the fish out there comes from a farm pond. Yeah, a lot of it does. And they're eating food that can have gluten in it. Okay, poultry, nuts, seeds, and beans are among the healthy foods. But you know, if you eat this way and you didn't have a gluten problem, you're going to be very healthy. You're going to live a long time, and you're going to look good. Now, I'll tell you something about epigenetics. Epigenetics, that's genetic structure in food. Look at a flower, 3 petals, 5, 8, 13, 21. Why is that? There's mathematics in gene structure. So when you eat this biomathematic, they even call it Fibonacci numbers, like you do in stock trading, that are in the food that you're eating, you know what it'll do to your body? It will rearrange your body. I can prove it. I have 3 people on my website, look at them, who may not have been as attractive as they wanted to be, and then they started eating this way, lost 100, 150 pounds. They'd only take very less than that to do it, but that's what they did. And that truck driver that weighed 360 that I brought to 210 at Planet Fitness, he looks like a movie star. Why is that? Because he's eating nutrient-dense foods. I even walked inside his truck, which he made me do to show me he had a crock pot in there when he came through from California again. That really made my day because I couldn't remember who he was. I give this talk all the time. And I've done some counseling for him apparently after he took a shower at Planet Fitness. And he says, well, Doc, maybe you remember what you did afterwards. What did I do? He says, you walked to my truck. And we figured it was 55 feet around the truck, divided into a mile, and we came up 100 times the truck, 1 mile. You told me to do it before I went to work, twice at work, and once after work. That's 4 miles a day. He ate this nutrient-dense way. He turned into a movie star. All his diabetes went away. Everything went away. He looks beautiful. He looks beautiful. He's on my website, cashmanhealth.com. You can see him there. And that's just proof of the pudding. That's all. So what I'm telling you is a nutritarian diet, a nutrient-dense diet. Dr. Furman, my friend, big-time pediatrician, wellness teacher. You see him on PBS a lot. I beat him in tennis the last time he was in town here, though, and he's much younger than me. His books, End of Diabetes, for example, are great books. He speaks about gluten in there. Dean Ornish's, Dr. Colwell Esseltine, Cleveland Clinic, Dr. Bernard, the National Alternative Medicine Council, Dr. McDougall's book, Dr. Joel Furman's book I already mentioned. In my books, I get 21 books on Amazon. All speak about nutrient-dense way of eating. The nutrients in the food will turn your appetite off. No diet. Eat all you want of nutrient-dense food. Maybe increase your AOL, your activity of living, a bit. Do it at work if you can, because then you get extra hours when you come home. You know, burn an extra 200 calories. That's 20 pounds in a year. Your diabetes will go away. Cut out the gluten if you have a gluten problem. And gluten-free grains too, buckwheat, tapioca, corn, rice, millet, nut flours, quinoa, sorghum. These are all gluten-free grains. So wheat is the main one we spoke about. We spoke about the other bad ones. And remember, we can have other symptoms, you know, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis. Get a gluten test. I see many times it's not done. You have multiple sclerosis. Get a gluten test. Not all multiple sclerosis are due to gluten problems, but some of it is. Some memory loss, dementia. Oh, you got Alzheimer's this. You mentioned a few words. Wait a minute. Run some testing. And what you should get if they think you, if you go a doctor, is to get a complete physical. Get a complete physical. Have them check all the rest of the blood work and make sure nothing else has gone wrong. What are ages? Because of amylopectin A increasing the insulin level and the blood sugar level, they can attach to proteins deposited in your brain and cause memory loss. You say, you got Alzheimer's disease. Baloney. You get some memory loss from the gluten, making ages, which you see in diabetics. Diabetics have a lot, over time, have memory loss, and it's due to the insulin causing these ages, these advanced glycation products, and can be avoided. We're talking about prevention. Talking about prevention here. So these, in summary today, what is number one on our list? Gluten testing. Everyone should have it. Children, any age, we want to do some gluten. Get a gluten panel at least if it's that normal. Maybe you need the endoscopy. Remember, there's some risk, not much, low risk. And the people here, and I'm a wellness director at Lutherans. I mean, they're very skillful, and they do it often, but that's not where you need to begin. And some people need genetic testing. And if you are diagnosed with gluten sensitivity or celiac disease, become informed. Read 4 or 5 books. Learn about these websites in here. Learn where the healthy foods are. And suppose you're the only one that's gluten sensitive in the family or have celiac disease and the rest of the family members don't, remember your kids have them tested too, then you have to educate your employer, you have to educate your family, because they shouldn't be bringing these things in the home that you're tempted to eat that donut when that could kill you. I mean, you could have a seizure, you could develop cancer. So you have to educate the family too, you know, but keep it simple. You know, maybe write down 5 pages or so, and you, okay, family, get together. I'm going to read you about what I got and do some education. So join us in our other lectures that we give. Believe me, if you follow us on television at 6 o'clock, I think it's Wednesday, 7 o'clock on Mondays, and public access. Going to have a radio show coming up, and I capture, I think, an hour of that, and that'll be starting maybe within a month or so. We'll put these things on the air. Maybe I'll take some phone calls there too. We'll see how that develops. We have to thank the industry and public access, the county, for providing this service to the public for free. We love you all. Come to our free lectures at Lutheran Hospital, CashmanHealth.com. The schedule's there. Give me a hug. Tell me your problem. And we try to educate you. And thanks very much for watching. Maybe you learned about the Wheel of Wellness. And join us in being healthy. Thank you very much. Namaste.